to move in a bit closer to the... That's right, if I go over here, then Ben's going to have... Ben's recording this for us. Austerity. Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Because the guy who should be recording it for us is in Mexico, and his camera's not got that long a zoom. So this is really up to you. We've got a few things which we will say and we want to say. I'm definitely going to put. I don't want to be there. We've got a few things which we want to say, and which in the form of invitations. Right now, I hope we're all having fun, but it's a case of what would you like to know? Excellent. Right. In which case, we know nothing. The scenarios here, some are taken directly out of the Dronescourge book. So this first one here, for example, which is between the 3 players, which is actually quite tricky at times. That comes straight out of Dronescourge. The whole breaching rules come straight out of Dronescourge. The archaeology ambush scenario also is a scenario out of Dronescourge, as is the corridor games, which some of you will get onto as part of the second games here. So as you can see, there's a lot here which is actually to do with Dronescourge. What is your experience of the Viri? What do you think of the Viri?
They were really interesting player games and very different. Certainly felt balanced from what well, mind you, I normally lose and we drew today.
So the balance, definitely balance, yes.
Yeah, they're really fun and interesting to play games.
Good. I mean, what's your experience of playing them now? I know you haven't had many games.
Again, as you said, it's not just a C3 drone army with the different models. It's all about the kind of command structure where you place your command drones and how they control units round about it. There's a lot of thought involved with the placement, and you can't just send units flying off on their own because you're not going to get the best out of them if they've got purely poor command values. But when they're all grouped together around the command unit, it's a really powerful army. So yeah, it's good. Like I said, they do feel very different to anything else, so it was a good addition.
Good. Please you're enjoying it, so enjoy it.
Do
What about the Garrix?
do the command units all have follow, so you can sort of move everything up, or do you have to sort of step them up and try not to?
No, the command units do have follow.
Yeah.
The command units are the only ones who've got leader rerolls, follow. Some have hero, but most don't. And they have command, obviously, so they're very dependent on that. But they don't have. There's no normal units with leader rerolls, for example. There's no normal units with anything special. You either have a swarm or you don't. So, which is what the intention was, I think, in the first place. The corridor. I will say there's some thanks to go here. The corridor games, which a couple of you will start playing in this next round. I've got to give some thanks to Stu and Dom. Thank you very much, guys. We had a lot of feedback on that during play testing, and the rules kept on getting more and more complicated. And it was really thanks to Stu and Dom saying, don't, and then Rick saying, just say, rely on Rick's rule, that we simplified everything right down so it became much more simpler.
Well, it has to get to a level where I could understand it. Yeah, I mean, that's typical development. You kind of develop rules up, they get progressively more baroque until you reach a point where they fall over of their own accord.
Yes, and you pick up the detritus and think, oh, that's much easier. So, yeah, thanks, Dom. Thanks, Stu.
Is there any mind to bring out those mats?
Which mats? Which mats? The
corridor.
The PDFs or the orbital?
The game orbital. So you've got the
the big mats? No, because I made those myself, designed those myself, put them together myself from a set of prints. I've forgotten who they're called, but I can tell you and I can find you. If anybody wants one of those, get in touch with me. I'll tell you who to go to Drive-Thru RPG and get the corridor floor plans from, and then I'll send you the PDF so you can print it out yourself. I got mine printed out through Deep Cut Studios. You can also get it printed out through printed.com, either on paper or on laminated paper, which is what we did. And we can give you the name of the ice base which is also from the same people. I can't remember who it is. Richard will be able to tell me, but he's not here.
He's downstairs.
He's downstairs. But it's a case of show me that you bought the corridors and I'll send you two of them, because it's not RRP, it's just something I bought, and I thought, well, I can make something really nice out of this, and it would actually represent Dronescourge really well. So, yes. So, yeah, works very well. I think they work wonderfully. We've already thought up loads of new scenarios based on them. The actual corridor games, Intersecting Explorations, is using the PDFs that will be free downloads from the book, or with the book as well. So you can see what they're going to be like as well.
So what else do we have planned in the long term for Antares?
Vol.
Yeah, Vol we'd like to get around to, and possibly Mercenaries.
Yes, lots of mercenaries.
Yeah. And you guys have probably seen some of the new models in the cabinets that we've got, which include some of the new mercenary units we've got planned. And we'd like to sort of push on that, I think, and do a few more, just to explore different races and looks and games ideas in a contained way. And possibly summarise that into a supplement at some point, which should be entertaining, isn't it?
It would be. We've actually got an awful lot of stuff in the pipeline for Antares. It's waiting on the to be produced PDF list. So we've got Adam's winning. I'm sorry it hasn't come out yet, Adam. Scenario campaign, mini campaign, I think, which would like to come out. We've got some Boromite combat engineers as a mercenary unit to come out. I'm currently working on something called the Splintering Shard, which is to do with Isaurians, but Rick and I need to talk about exactly what the time dilation effects are around Antares, or rather I've got to translate it so that Rick doesn't go... which is why there was a question on Facebook recently saying, you know, how are you doing, guys? Does anyone know how long it takes to go around Antares on the surface? Yes, we do. We worked it out as part of this whole process of, as part of the Splintering Shard, to work out how long it takes to communicate between different areas on the northern interface, for example.
Yeah. Because it's a bit abstract, isn't it? Because you couldn't literally start at one point in Antares and go all the way around without diving into through a gate and back again at some point. Just because the photosphere is supposed to be so corrosive and dangerous. So the actual time it might take you to get around
is much longer than that. Yeah.
And a bit roll the dice, really.
Yes, it is. Especially as you might be a Concorde ship going through Isaurian space or through Vol space and trying to negotiate that, if you're a Concorde, may be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, you might have to go, rather than going all the way around, you might have to go all the way around and dogleg a bit. So the actual distance might be longer, as well as the time taking to go in and out of the gate.
But we do have it, and we're trying to work out the effects of Obireg on lifting stuff up and everything else. Because obviously, the further away you go from Antares is a huge star, it's about 40 AU in diameter. But obviously, you can still go away from the surface, and then there's the atmosphere obviously gets less corrosive, so you can then perhaps go a little bit faster. But you then start getting into Obireg. We've got to work that out.
Yeah, well, somebody has to work until that.
Okay, well. Otherwise, what can I say? Dronescourge. You'll see various reviews, and there'll be, I think there's one coming up in WI next month, isn't there?
Excuse me.
Hope so.
Yeah, fairly soon.
That has got Virai in, Gar Exiles, and it's got Privateers in, which you've seen tonight. It's also got rules for breaching in, it's got rules for working inside, it's got a few new weapons, it's got this phase shift projector for the Isaurians. Basically, it fires, and then a synchronized unit can go through the space that's there. That's that odd-looking weird cannon up there, if it's up there with 3 prongs or something, phase shift projector. There's some new variations on the existing fractal cannons, so you can put them into new, absolutely, you can put them into new mode. There's new characters which you can see up there, some of which are already out. Taras Kalamon, who's this rather shifty privateer. You've got Jageleos, who is this top new Who intelligence Mandarin, who always makes sure she's got some red coats, Vyas bodyguard around with her to take up the brunt of the attacks. There is, who else have we got there? We've got Virai Fastinstance, and there's Shaltok himself, who's the leader of the Gar Exiles. What else have we got there? I think that's it in terms of characters.
Some old characters as well.
There's some old characters as well, yeah. Zan 2 just can't get away from the Determinate and the Northern Interface, so he's been dragged back in. Obviously, we also have the distance, I don't know, finger meddling of Karg. He always gets in the way. And I'm trying to remember who else is in this.
I think in terms of characters, isn't it? Yeah, but there's some interesting new chaps to bring along. Yeah. Bodyguards were introducing some new pan-human types as well. So it's the opportunity to... Yes, it's a very dense supplement. There's lots in it. He went mad, didn't he?
Well, you could say that. The thing is, the supplement actually introduces the first new faction we've got. So it's a combination of some of the old codexes, I suppose, but it's not quite codex-like. Or army book, as well as the supplement, the narrative campaign supplement, in the same way we've had in the past. Yeah. So it's sort of like got two books compressed into one.
Two for one, really. Yeah. And it is very dense. I think whoever buys that book, you'll be looking to use every single thing in it. The chances are, you'll pick and choose, and there's still plenty of these in it.
There are new environments, so dangerous environments, hazardous environments were introduced in Crisis, of course, and we've got some more in here like Zero G, and there's even a suggestion of a Bounce the Rocks game where you can actually have
it's asteroids.
Terrain asteroids going around the table, colliding into each other or into you. Yeah. Asteroids, absolutely, absolutely, the game, or possibly billiards.
And I was discussing first with Rick, have you any plans about second edition?
Good question. That was something we were going to invite you about, talk to you about. Obviously, as a company, we have to think about what we do about second edition or anything else. There is nothing on the table right now in terms of write a second edition, start a second edition. We don't know when a second edition will come out. We're thinking it will be at least 2 years. But we won't know that for a little while longer. But if we say at least 2 years, that's fine. But the great thing about it is that it gives us a chance to say to you guys, what would you like to see in terms of the second edition? I know, obviously I've played with an awful lot of you guys, and I get feedback from you, and obviously we get feedback on the forums. But some of the things which people don't like are the complexity of terrain rules. You've got ones, special successes, normal successes, failures, double successes, and depending on what size you are and what you're doing and where you are, things get a little bit hazy when you're moving through it. The actual terrain rules itself is just a 3x3 grid. It's a simple matrix, so it's not that bad. So would you like that simplified, for example? Would you make, or not simplified, streamlined? Because one of the things we don't really want to do is dumb it down, because it's not that sort of game.
No, but how you present a game can make it more or less accessible.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that I sometimes hear from people is that Antares is quite hard to get into. You've already got into it, so it's not necessarily a problem for you guys, but when you're introducing other people to the game, is this something you ever find?
Never.
Yeah.
We still run demos at Arch up and awful lot.
Yeah.
And it's literally just 10 minutes of explaining how stuff works.
Yeah.
It's all absolutely fine.
Yeah.
It's just getting people to commit to the demo game in the first place.
Yeah,
once they're at the table, then they're actually loving it.
It's a good point, because when we demo it, we sell it. Yeah, all the time. And Tim demos regularly, don't you, Dan?
Well, some of you see me at shows. John's helped me out. Lee, Adam's helped me out at demos. And it's interesting is that I produce a demo game, as you're saying, and next thing I know, well, he's left now, but next thing I know, Nick or Donna come around saying, "Oh, we thought you were here." Why? Because people have just played your demo and they're buying Antares. They just love it. People just thought exactly how you're saying. So it is a case of saying what makes it more accessible to people, because once people try it, they love it.
We do
When you're doing demonstrations, you use cut that version of rules. That's the base one.
I use Car 9 version, step 4, approximately, if everyone knows that. So it's not full rules, because you can't do it with a 1 hour, 1.5 hour demo game at a convention. But other than that, it's Antares.
Yeah. I found when I was demoing it, it was about building up a critical mass of people in the club. So I demoed it to different people, one a week for like 3 weeks, and somebody else I gave some of the plastic gar stuff that I had a giant pile of, and then suddenly we've got 5 or 6 players, and we joined in with the Antares program that you guys ran, and there was a critical mass.
Yeah.
I think the Antares program was quite successful, and it did generate, because you had Noise Sector doing a podcast, you had other people producing content. I think there is a bit of, because we've all come to this event, so we know there's Antares players, but in local clubs it's, well, I've got some stuff and I've not really done anything with it.
Yeah.
And nobody's...
Hugely. And that's, we know that there's a lot of clubs who actually trying to sign up for that, and they've got the free box. But 10 miles up the road from me, one of the other clubs has still got that in the cupboard, I'm afraid to say. They haven't done anything with it. But it's just getting there and actually saying, look, have some fun.
I'm wondering how much of it is, because I've played Antares a lot, not recently, because I've been really busy doing other stuff, but the mechanics are really solid. I think leaving it 2 years to a second edition is the right decision, and streamlining rather than doing a big transition would be the right thing to do.
We don't, one of the things that I certainly don't want to do is see a complete model relaunch, and I really don't think we'll do that. I don't think we'll do this at all. I mean, obviously
We couldn't.
I don't think
It's
we
taken us
could.
this long to get.
All this
We're
lot.
already, right.
So effectively, we'll be reusing the same figures, so it will still be there, which is, I know what some people were worried about. It's not going to be a case of new edition, new models. It's a case of new edition coming along. All we're going to do is just try and streamline the rules, present them in a slightly different way to make them a bit more accessible, and maybe add in some more flavour in some places, get rid of some of the complicated things which are in there, which players aren't that worried about, for example, or we don't see being used that often.
Could be. I mean,
But it's all in the air, isn't it?
Well, it is. That's why I was interested in the views on the game. It's interesting to hear what you guys are saying. It's actually what you're saying is actually the game doesn't particularly need altering. What it needs is promoting.
Yes.
I wonder if it's better when you're explaining to someone than someone reading the book and trying to learn it themselves. I wonder, it seems to me that where there are people playing, people learn, but where there's 1 or 2 people buying the book, it seems to die. And is that because the layout of the book or the way it's explained? Is it something that needs to be worked through?
It is a bit wordy. I mean, the way when I did the original game, it grew in the telling a little bit. The feedback I got was often the ones of, can you make sure that this is referenced in the main rule section? So a lot of things that I would instinctively have put into an advanced rule section or confined into the special rules tended to get embedded within the main rule explanation. And it does make the main rule explanation quite lengthy. But you can reorder the way you explain things, and that just actually makes things more accessible. I know it's bizarre, but sometimes if the whole of the section explaining how you do something is on one spread, it's easy to get your head around. The minute it goes on to like 4 or 5 pages, it's quite hard. And it's simply because of the way you approach rules and you remember things.
Warlord in general's got a lot of good games, right? That are, the rulebook's a big thing. You literally download it, 2 or 3 sheet PDFs, and you're playing the game.
So who's that?
Warlord in general.
Yeah,
Red Skies, Test of Honour. What the zombie one has now played. So, and even Bolt Action itself, it's a small rulebook, isn't it? It's compressive.
It is fairly small.
Yeah, so comparing the two, you've got that, it's something people can sit down and read through. It's doesn't work in 5 minutes, well, I'll bring it in for you. But when you present them with this A4 thing you can knock them out with, it gets a bit daunting.
Well, because it's got everything in it. If you look at Bolt Action, it's got the rules for the game, but it doesn't have all the rules for the German army. It doesn't have all the rules for the Russian army. If you put all those supplements in a big, you've got something that's way, way bigger than the Antares rulebook. And it's got, then that'll have the special rules in for, say I play Russians. So for the Russians and all the equipment. Well, the Antares rulebook aimed to be everything in one book. So it did kind of produce a big book. Particularly as you've got things like the...
I'm not knocking it, I'm just saying...
No, I'm just saying that's why. No, I agree absolutely with you. I'm just saying that's why it kind of worked that way. It wasn't an intention. I didn't intend to write something that knock out a camel. But yeah.
So anyway, so one of the things that would be nice to see is on the forums, once they're up, I haven't been able to get to them yet because I've just not had time to get to them yet. But it would be nice perhaps just to say, what would you like to see? And then we can start looking at it, and then once it appears on the schedule, we can start seeing what's best, which may be, as you said, perhaps promoting it better, perhaps streamlining it, presenting it a different way.
Have you thought about making it, because me as a player, I won't play with unpainted figures, so, and I take ages to paint, so it's ages for me to get it enough to play.
Yeah.
So, you look at the Antares, my story army, it's the biggest army I've ever painted in my life. And it's still quite small. But as an entry point, what I felt like is having 10 figures, chucking them on the table and going. Is there worth making, dare I say, a kill kind of version as part of the second edition?
Well, you could certainly do something like that and put it on for Nexus, for example, but the only thing I'd say about that is, because of the dice draw system, you've kind of got a minimum, haven't you? And two units aside is...
No, I'm thinking... Well, literally one model per dice.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think Warlords are doing something like that with the World War II system at the moment. So see how they get on with that. Maybe something to look at. Yeah. Which is
just for me, it would be a quicker way for me to get into another army or another.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm not. Me and Nigel Stillman had a go at a game that was used that kind of mechanic for. It was ancient, but it does work.
Because Test of Honor uses that kind of mechanic, and that's really, really popular. Because I hate to think how many Test of Honor armies I've got.
I mean, it's different types of rules. You could produce something, but it ends up being a slightly different game. David, you were next, I think.
Oh no, all I was thinking was the lack of. We were talking about once people have demoed the games, they're into the game.
Yeah.
We're talking about people being put off by the fact that it's a correct book. Isn't it just a simple case of rather than doing a second edition on the rule set, just redo the book? And the rules themselves, we all know that they're absolutely fine. There's a few things that need to be tightened up. But that rule, it was around when the game was first launched, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't have much to illustrate it with.
No.
If you look through the illustrations, it's quite skimpy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some of the models in there are mine. So, if we did it again today, we'd have the opportunity to make it far more contemporary in terms of the game.
Even existing games, we would all probably drop money on a new rule book because we know that the ones we're using at the moment, an awful lot of it is out of date because of the FAQs and the army lists.
Yeah, but I wouldn't aim to change the rules. You see, I don't think there's anything wrong with the rules.
Just the book.
Yeah. Well, that's the sort of thing you see. Is the best way to approach the army book. See, with Bolt Action, the army books exist as separate publications, but with Antares they don't. They only exist online and in the main rulebook, which means they're constantly out of date. Which is one of the issues with the current rulebook. The army lists are not.
They're not up to date, whereas the online ones are. So maybe there is an argument to say, for example, in base one, you've just got some basic suggested forces, you can actually put that in the core rule book that refer people still to the online one, which is where everybody else is going at the moment. And the online PDFs are really appreciated, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thing before that demo games run with lower squad sizes. I think in Germany sometimes with only a Domari squad with only 3 troopers works very well with the rules. To size it down because we would like to present 4 or 5 squads, and if they're all such big with 6 models or something, they take really long to play. If you sit with 3 models, it works rather fast and introduces entire also.
So you've got about 20 figures aside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. So it's an interesting way of addressing that question you're asking it.
So just have to do a little bit math to seize the right point value for each unit.
Yeah, but it's not hard, is it? It's,
Not really.
Sorry, you were saying...
Just one of the things that I really appreciated about the way you guys have done it is by updating the army lists online, because it's with other things and if you're with other publications, it's a turnoff.
Yeah.
For me, because with all the stuff that's in the pipeline and all the stuff that you're bringing in, you know, it's very easy to go online and just draw from that.
Yes.
But if I have to wait till a publication comes out, then I'm I'm more likely to wait until a number of things have been released.
Rather than this ability to actually keep things flowing.
Yeah.
I think more and more people are going that way, and I think it's the best way to go. But that's one of the discussions we've got to have. By the way, everybody, some of you have come from quite far afield. I came from Stonehenge. We've got somebody from Glasgow or Strathclyde, I think. No idea who that is. We've got some people from Germany. And I'm delighted to say that Dion's actually come all the way from... Iowa?
No, Ottawa.
Ottawa. Yeah. I was thinking, I'm sure he was Canadian. What?
Yeah. Trust me.
So I think he came... Yeah, I think he came... Oh, that's...
And suddenly I regret being so nice to you.
So are you on holiday?
I was here on a business trip.
Right, okay.
And so it just...
You've combined.
The timing worked perfectly.
Good. Where's your business? Is it Nottingham?
So, yeah, I was at Waddington for a week at the RAF station.
Yeah, okay. We were going to have one person more who was coming from further afield, who was Justin Shearer, as you know, is in Melbourne.
Yep.
Unfortunately, his business trip doesn't start till next week, so he couldn't. So he gives his regrets about not being able to make it, otherwise he would have been here, obviously.
Is he still playing? Has he kind of gone off the radar?
He's gone off the radar because of several reasons. Mostly personal, there's no other reason for it. Mostly personal and also work. He has been promoted, he has into a position he's never done before, and he is running a new department, so personal life, as sometimes happens, gets in the way. And that's all it is. I'm in touch with him still. David's taken over some of the reviewing stuff, and I will get the Freeborn shard out. Now that we've got the games day finished, I'll have a bit more time. But yeah, there's no issues with Freeborn, Shard or Justin at all. He's just busy. Sorry, that was my alarm saying 5 minutes on the next game.
Yeah, so if there's anything anyone's been saving back that they want to ask it now. Sorry?
Chicata and Chicax.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good one. You're quite right.
Yeah. People talk about the ball, they don't know about Chicax and Chicax, algorithms. So, my race.
Yeah, it's one of the races we've kind of got as potential development. We've not thought about it at all, other than the almost impossibility of pronouncing it, which is the gag. The Vol was still kind of, we exchange ideas about, but we've had to kind of be a bit slow with the Vol because it's a plastic set. It's going to be an entire plastic kit. And we need to get the funds together to do it. So to some extent it's being put back, simply because we need to prioritise other things at Warlord. Usually World War II Americans, which are very popular. And I'm sure Vol will be when we do them, but it's been put back a bit. Looking forward to doing them.
Any talk of doing a zone art on either prequel line for Resurgence and I'll come back.
Yeah, we talked about it a few times, and one of the things again with Samurai is the models themselves are quite difficult to produce. So the question then goes, are they worth doing in plastic as well? But we do quite like them.
Yeah, we do like them, but we're also having a look generally as to what other factions, main models in the factions to produce in plastic. And that's all the questions that are in the air at the moment, but neither Rick or I have the answers to. Maybe because the rest of the company doesn't have the answer to.
Yeah,
right yet.
We don't have our hands on the purse strings when it comes to financing tooling. And tooling can be a bottleneck for everything. So, of course, Warlord has ambitions to make plastic vehicles and tanks, World War II in particular, and then Napoleonics and H's and so on and so forth. So we're fighting for resources all the time. Yeah.
Have you considered, I mean, you've got the full-size frames, have you considered doing smaller frames?
Yeah.
Because I'd love even the size of the Imperial Roman Auxiliary frame for Gar Outcast or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's worth considering because obviously the cost of tooling comes down considerably. You still have to design the models and you still have to have enough utility in terms of the weapon options and bits and pieces on that frame. But a smaller frame is definitely the way to go.
I mean, something like Outcast with the lugger guns and a few bits and bobs is just fine.
Yeah, Vol are enormous, so
you can't do it.
Yeah, the frame have to be quite big.
Would you ever consider going back to Kickstarter to try and get the funding for it?
Probably not. Kickstarters are not inherently part of the Warlord business model.
Yeah.
And Mantic do Kickstarters all the time.
And they've got a full-time person who does Kickstarters.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say with Kickstarters, you're one Kickstarter away from bankruptcy because you only got to have one fail and you're in trouble. But I do know Alessio Cavatori, the River Horse, he uses Kickstarters to fund his projects as well. So, we have talked about it on occasion, but we've always decided not to do it, largely because I suspect Warlord would have to do what you described. They'd have to employ somebody to look after it.
And then they'd be worried about the failure, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, Mantic, I don't think failed really. They produce some wonderful stuff, but that's their business model.
Yeah.
I think we've got to draw it to a close. I hope that's okay. Nothing urgent. As I said, we will put something up on forums to do with some fun.